The floating arenas of Nexus Prime hung like jewels in the violet sky, their crystalline surfaces reflecting the light of three setting suns. In Arena 7, the crowd's roar reached a fever pitch as Varix, the seven-time champion, crushed another challenger into the dust. Her scaled body rippled with bioluminescent patterns of victory, and her four arms raised ceremonially to accept the audience's praise. The tournament drew warriors from across the galaxy, each hopping to claim the title of Ultimate Champion and the mysterious prize that came with it. But tonight was different. In the shadows of the competitor's entrance, a figure stood motionless, watching. Unlike the other challengers with their enhanced bodies and visible tech augmentations, this one appeared deceptively ordinary. Zara Blackwood stepped into the light, her simple black combat suit a stark contrast to the elaborate armor worn by the alien warriors around her. The registration drone hovered before her, its scanners sweeping her form repeatedly, confused by the readings it received. "Species designation unclear," it chirped. "Please verify biological status." "Human," Zara replied, her voice carrying a hint of amusement. "Pure human." The drone's lights flickered in what appeared to be disbelief. In the century since humanity had joined the galactic community, pure humans had become increasingly rare. Most had opted for genetic enhancements or cybernetic improvements to compete in the modern universe. The news of a pure human challenger spread through the arena like wildfire. In the VIP box, tournament director Krell leaned forward, his crystalline body refracting the arena's lights. "Interesting," he murmured to his associates. "Most interesting indeed." Varix's victory celebration was cut short as the announcement echoed through the arena. "Next challenger, Zara Blackwood of Earth. Classification, pure human." The crowd erupted in a mixture of laughter and disbelief. Some even booed, considering it an insult to their champion. Varix turned to face her new opponent, all four of her arms flexing as her bioluminescence shifted to a threatening red pattern. "A pure human," she called out, her translator making her words boom across the arena. "Have you come to die, little one?" Zara stepped onto the combat platform, her boots making no sound on the energy-suffused surface. "I came to fight," she replied simply. The platform rose, carrying both competitors to the center of the arena where the actual combat would take place. The rules were simple. No weapons, no killing, victory by submission or incapacitation. But as every regular viewer knew, accidents happened frequently in these matches. The medical teams stationed at each corner of the arena weren't there for show. "Begin," the command rang out, and Varix launched herself forward with incredible speed, her four arms moving in perfect coordination to strike at different angles. But Zara wasn't there anymore. She had moved so quickly and smoothly that many in the audience thought their eyes were playing tricks on them. "Impossible," Varix hissed, her bioluminescence flickering with confusion. She attacked again, this time using her species' natural ability to generate short-range electric shocks. The air crackled with energy, but Zara danced through the electrical discharge as if it were merely a light rain. The crowd fell silent, their earlier mockery forgotten as they witnessed something they couldn't explain. Zara moved with a grace that seemed to defy physics, her reactions faster than any unaugmented being should be capable of. "What are you?" Varix demanded, falling back into a defensive stance. Her bioluminescence had shifted to a worried purple. Zara smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Just human," she said, and then she attacked. What followed would be talked about in fighting circles for years to come. Zara moved like water, flowing around Varix's strikes while landing her own with surgical precision. Each hit targeted nerve clusters that even most aliens didn't know existed in Varix's species. In the VIP box, Director Krell's crystalline form vibrated with excitement. "Scan her again," he ordered. "There must be some explanation." But the scans showed the same thing. No augmentations, no genetic modifications, just pure human biology. It was impossible, and yet they were all watching it happen. Varix's movements became desperate, her coordinated attacks degrading into wild swings. Zara caught one of her arms, using the champion's own momentum to send her spinning. Before Varix could recover, Zara struck 3 precise points on her back, and the champion's bioluminescence went dark as she crumpled to the ground. The arena fell into absolute silence. 7 years of victories ended in less than 5 minutes by a pure human. Zara stood over her fallen opponent, not even breathing hard, as the medical team rushed forward to attend to Varix. "Victory to Zara Blackwood of Earth!" The announcement seemed to shake the audience from their stupor, and the arena erupted in chaos. Some cheered, others demanded investigations, but all of them knew they had witnessed something unprecedented. As Zara walked back to the competitors' area, her face revealed nothing of her thoughts. But in the shadows of the corridor, she allowed herself a small smile. Phase 1 was complete. Now the real challenge would begin. The aftermath of Zara's victory sent shockwaves through Nexus Prime's fighting community. In the competitors' quarters, warriors from a dozen different species huddled in small groups, their conversations a mix of fear and fascination. The holovids of her fight against Varix played on repeat, analyzed frame by beings who had dedicated their lives to combat. Drax, a hulking centaurian with cybernetic arms, watched the footage for the 100th time. His metallic fingers tapped against the table, creating a rhythm that matched Zara's movements on screen. "Look at her eyes," he rumbled to his companions. "They never change, not once during the entire fight." In her private chamber, Zara sat cross-legged on the floor, her eyes closed in meditation. The room's environmental controls had been set to Earth standard, but she hadn't touched them. The cold, thin air of Nexus Prime didn't seem to bother her at all. A soft chime announced a visitor, and she opened her eyes to find tournament official Lysandra hovering in the doorway. Lysandra's crystalline form, similar to Director Krell's but more elegant, caught the light in fascinating patterns. "The board requests your presence," she announced, her voice like wind through chimes. "There are concerns about your registration." Zara rose smoothly, her movements liquid grace. "Of course there are," she replied with a slight smile. "Lead the way." The walk to the board's chamber took them through the heart of the arena complex. Other competitors quickly moved aside as they passed, some trying to hide their interest, others openly starring. A group of Martian cyborgs, their red-tinted metal shells gleaming, tracked her movement with weapon-grade optical sensors. The board's chamber was a vast room dominated by a circular table, around which sat representatives from the major spacefaring races. Director Krell occupied the central position, his crystalline body pulsing with subtle lights. "Zara Blackwood," he began, his voice resonating through the chamber. "Your victory has raised some interesting questions." "I followed all tournament rules," Zara replied calmly, standing in the center of the circle. "No weapons, no augmentations, no lethal force." "That's precisely the issue," a Proximan representative interjected, their plasma-based form swirling with agitation. "Our scans show you are unaugmented, yet you moved faster than our enhanced warriors, struck harder than beings twice your mass. It's impossible." Zara's smile never wavered. "Impossible for you, perhaps, but humans have always been underestimated." The chamber erupted in murmurs. Director Krell raised a crystalline appendage for silence. "We have known humans for a century. None have demonstrated abilities like yours, unless—" his form flickered with sudden understanding. "Unless they've been hiding their true potential." "An interesting theory," Zara replied, her voice neutral. "But I'm here to fight, not to confirm or deny theories about human capabilities." A Jovian representative, their massive gas-based form contained within a sophisticated environmental suit, leaned forward. "You realize your presence here has caused quite a stir. Several competitors have withdrawn from the tournament, citing safety concerns." "Safety concerns?" Zara's eyebrow arched slightly. "About an unaugmented human, how fascinating." The truth was, the other competitors had good reason to be worried. In the training areas, surveillance footage showed Zara practicing alone, her movements suggesting she had been holding back significantly in her fight with Varix. Some claimed they saw her moving so fast that the cameras couldn't track her. Others swore they witnessed her lifting weights that would challenge industrial loading machines. Director Krell's crystalline form pulsed with deep colors. "We have decided to allow your continued participation," he announced. "But you will be under constant observation. Any violation of tournament rules, any hint of hidden augmentation, and you will be immediately disqualified." "Understood," Zara replied, turning to leave. But at the doorway, she paused. "Just remember, Director, observation works both ways." The cryptic comment left the board members shifting uncomfortably in their seats. As Zara walked back through the complex, news of her clearance to continue spread quickly. The next round of fights would begin tomorrow, and already the betting odds had shifted dramatically. In her chamber, Zara received another visitor. This time, it was Verix herself. The former champion had recovered, though her bioluminescence pattern still showed signs of distress. "I need to know," Verix said without preamble. "What are you really?" Zara considered the question for a long moment. "I am exactly what I appear to be," she finally replied. "The real question is, what are you all so afraid of discovering?" Verix's patterns shifted to a deep blue of uncertainty. "There are rumors," she said quietly, "about why this tournament really exists, about what happens to the winners after they claim their prize. I thought I was ready to find out, but after fighting you—" She trailed off, her patterns swirling with anxiety. "Sometimes," Zara said softly, "the truth is exactly what we fear it might be." She stepped closer to Verix, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Watch the next fights carefully. You might learn something interesting about your employers." As Verix left, visibly shaken, Zara returned to her meditation pose. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new fights, and new opportunities to uncover what lay beneath the tournament's glittering surface. The real question wasn't whether she could win, it was whether the truth would emerge before it was too late. The quarterfinals of the tournament began with an eerie silence. The usual roar of the crowd had been replaced by tense anticipation as Zara faced her next opponent, a Neptunian warrior named Thorax, whose liquid metal body rippled with deadly precision. The arena's environmental shields hummed as they adjusted to contain any potential damage from the upcoming fight. In the VIP box, Director Krell's crystalline form pulsed with unusual patterns as he watched. Beside him, a hooded figure leaned forward, their features hidden in shadow. "Is she the one?" the figure whispered, their voice carrying an otherworldly resonance. "We'll know soon enough," Krell replied, his crystalline structure reflecting light in complex patterns. "If she survives this round." Down in the arena, Thorax launched the first attack, his liquid metal form surging forward like a tidal wave. Zara didn't move, not until the very last second. Then she did something that made the entire audience gasp. She ran straight into the wave. For a moment, it seemed as though she had been consumed by the metallic mass. But then Thorax's form began to convulse, ripples of disruption spreading through his liquid body. Zara emerged from the other side, completely unharmed, while Thorax struggled to maintain his cohesion. "Impossible," someone in the crowd whispered. "She's disrupting his molecular bonds somehow." But Zara wasn't finished. She moved with purpose now, each step precise, each gesture calculated. As Thorax tried to reform, she touched specific points on his liquid surface, leaving trails of light that seemed to lock his molecules in place. Within moments, the mighty Neptunian was frozen in a crystalline statue, conscious but immobile. The victory was declared, but no one was celebrating. In the competitors' area, Drax the Centaurian turned to Verix, who had been watching intently. "That's not just combat skill," he rumbled. "She understands things about our biology that even we don't know." Verix's bioluminescence patterns shifted nervously. "I've been doing some research," she whispered, "about past tournaments, about the winners." She glanced around before continuing. None of them were ever seen again after claiming their prize. Meanwhile, in the lower levels of the arena complex, Zara moved silently through restricted areas, her security clearance as a quarter-finalist giving her access to previously forbidden zones. The corridors here were different, sterile, clinical, more laboratory than sporting venue. Through reinforced windows, she caught glimpses of strange equipment and containment units. A sudden movement caught her attention. Director Krell was leading a group of figures in environmental suits through a heavily guarded doorway. Zara pressed herself against a wall, enhancing her hearing to catch their conversation. "The specimens are responding well to the latest treatments," one of the figures was saying. "The genetic material from previous champions has proven invaluable if this batch succeeds." "The human's genetic structure could be the key we've been missing," Krell interrupted. "Her abilities, they're beyond anything we've seen before. Natural evolution achieving what our best genetic engineering couldn't." Zara had heard enough. She made her way back to the public areas, her mind racing. In her chamber, she activated a quantum-encrypted communicator hidden in her suit. "Command, this is Agent Blackwood. Confirmation of suspicions the tournament is a front for illegal genetic harvesting. Previous champions weren't just disappeared, they were—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "They were used as test subjects." The response came back instantly. "Maintain your cover, Agent. Gather more evidence. The Galactic Council needs proof before they can act." But Zara's cover was already in jeopardy. As she prepared for sleep, her enhanced senses detected multiple surveillance devices being activated in her chamber. The tournament organizers were watching her more closely now, perhaps suspecting that she wasn't just an extraordinary fighter. The next morning, as she entered the training area, she found most other competitors giving her a wide berth, all except Varix, who approached with determined steps. "I know what you are," the former champion said quietly. "You're not just a fighter, you're an investigator." Zara studied her carefully. "And what do you plan to do with that information?" Varix's bioluminescence shifted to a pattern Zara hadn't seen before, one that spoke of resolve and fear in equal measure. "I want to help my sister. She won a regional tournament 3 years ago. They said she went on to compete in a higher league, but I never heard from her again. I need to know what happened." Before Zara could respond, an announcement echoed through the complex. "All quarterfinalists report for mandatory medical examination." She exchanged a knowing look with Varix. The tournament organizers were making their move. As Zara walked toward the medical bay, she felt the weight of eyes upon her. Not just the obvious surveillance cameras, but hidden watchers in the walls and ceiling. The tournament's secret was beginning to unravel, but the real question remained. Could she expose the truth before becoming another specimen in their twisted experiments? The medical bay of Arena 7 gleamed with an artificial sterility that set Zara's nerves on edge. As she sat on the examination table, she watched Dr. Helix, a being composed of intertwining DNA-like strands, prepare an array of scanning equipment. Behind the doctor, 2 security drones hovered silently, their weapon ports barely concealed. "This is a routine examination," Dr. Helix said, their voice a double helix of harmonics. "We just need to ensure all competitors are healthy." The way they emphasized the last word made it clear this was anything but routine. Zara remained still as the scanners passed over her body, but her mind was racing. Through nearly imperceptible movements, she activated the quantum recorder embedded in her retinas. Every piece of equipment, every readout, every reaction from Dr. Helix was being documented. "Fascinating," Dr. Helix murmured, their strands twisting with excitement. "Your cellular structure. It's unlike anything in our database. The potential applications." They caught themselves, quickly adopting a more professional tone. "Everything appears to be in order. You're cleared for the semifinals." As Zara left the medical bay, she caught sight of Drax being led into a different examination room. The Centaurian's cybernetic arms were twitching nervously. In the waiting area, Varix sat with her bioluminescence dimmed to almost nothing, a sign of extreme stress. Back in her chamber, Zara found an unexpected visitor tournament official, Lysandra. The crystalline being's form was clouded, suggesting internal conflict. "I've been watching you," Lysandra said without preamble. "You see too much, understand too much." "Is that an observation or a threat?" Zara asked calmly, positioning herself between Lysandra and the door. "A warning." Lysandra's form cleared slightly. "Director Krell has authorized special measures for your semi-final match. They're not planning to let you reach the finals alive." Zara's expression remained neutral. "Why tell me this?" "Because I've seen what happens in the lower levels." Lysandra's voice dropped to a whisper. The experiments, the failed attempts to replicate champion abilities, the screams, her crystalline form shuddered. It has to stop. A soft chime interrupted them. The semifinal matchups were being announced. Zara's opponent would be Chronax, a cybernetically enhanced warrior from the outer colonies, known for his lethal accidents in previous matches. In the hours before the semifinals, the arena complex buzzed with nervous energy. Competitors who had been eliminated watched Zara with a mixture of fear and hope. Some had begun to piece together the pattern of disappearing champions. Others had their own missing friends and relatives from previous tournaments. Varix found Zara in the training area, going through a series of fluid movements that seemed to bend the light around her. "I've made contact with others," Varix whispered. "Former competitors, family members of the missing. They're ready to help." Drax joined them, his cybernetic arms whirring softly. "The medical scan revealed something," he said grimly. "They've already started altering my cybernetics without my knowledge, preparing me for something." "They're not just studying champions," Zara replied quietly. "They're creating weapons, living weapons." She shared what she had learned about the genetic harvesting program, the attempts to combine different species' abilities into something new and terrible. As they talked, more competitors gathered around them, a loose circle of warriors who had begun to understand the true nature of their situation. Each had a story: a missing friend, a strange medical procedure, an unexplained accident. But not everyone was on their side. From the shadows, other fighters watched, some loyal to the tournament organizers, others too afraid to act. The arena had become a powder keg waiting for a spark. That spark came sooner than expected. As Zara prepared for her semi-final match, alarms suddenly blared throughout the complex. Security drones swarmed the corridors, and Director Krell's voice echoed through the speakers. "Attention all personnel. We have a security breach in the lower levels. Initiate containment protocols immediately." Through the chaos, Zara caught glimpses of something on the security feeds. Containment units in the lower levels were failing, releasing their experimental subjects. The tournament's darkest secrets were literally breaking free. "It's starting." Lysandra appeared beside her, her crystalline form pulsing with urgent patterns. "You have to move now. The evidence you need is in Krell's private laboratory, but with the security systems in chaos." Zara nodded. "Tell the others to be ready when I give the signal." She paused, hearing heavy footsteps approaching. "The real tournament is about to begin." Down in the lower levels, alarms continued to wail as the facility's darkest experiments fought for freedom. Above, in the arena proper, thousands of spectators remained unaware of the chaos brewing beneath their feet. And somewhere in between, Director Krell was surely preparing his own countermoves. The time for hiding was over. Now Zara would show them exactly what a pure human could do when pushed to the limit. Arena 7 erupted into chaos as emergency sirens wailed through the complex. The massive viewing screens flickered with static before displaying security feeds from the lower levels, escaped experimental subjects, twisted combinations of different species' abilities, rampaging through the facility. The crowd's excitement turned to terror as they realized this was no planned exhibition. Director Krell's voice boomed through the speakers, trying to maintain control. "Remain calm. Security protocols are—" His announcement cut off as the main power grid failed, plunging the arena into darkness before emergency lights cast everything in a blood-red glow. In the midst of the pandemonium, Zara moved with purpose. She had shed her facade of the simple tournament fighter, her movements now precise and lethal. Around her, a coalition of fighters had formed Varix, her bioluminescence pulsing with determination. Drax, his cybernetic arms reconfigured for combat, and others who had learned the truth about the tournament's dark purpose. "The laboratory is 3 levels down," Lysandra guided them, her crystalline form providing additional light in the darkened corridors. "But Director Krell has activated his elite security force, the Shadow Guard." As if on cue, black-armored figures materialized from the shadows, their forms shifting between solid and gaseous states. The Shadow Guard failed experiments from previous tournaments, their minds and bodies twisted into loyal weapons. Go, Zara commanded her allies. Get to the lab, I'll handle them. Before anyone could protest, she stepped forward to face the Shadow Guard. What followed defied explanation. Zara moved like living lightning, her body seeming to exist in multiple places at once. The Shadow Guard's phase-shifting abilities meant nothing as she struck them with precision that suggested she could see the very quantum structure of their beings. Each hit landed with surgical accuracy, disrupting their molecular cohesion. Now we know why they were so interested in your genetics, Varric said in awe as they raced past the fallen guards. You're not just unaugmented, you're evolved. Zara allowed herself a grim smile. Humanity hasn't been sleeping for the past century. We've been preparing, every generation pushing our natural potential further without relying on artificial enhancement. They reached Krell's private laboratory to find the director himself waiting, his crystalline form now transformed into something monstrous. Fragments of previous champions' abilities had been integrated into his structure, creating a being of nightmare. You could have been our greatest achievement, Krell's voice resonated from multiple crystalline facets. Instead, you'll become part of our next evolution. Behind him, tanks filled with genetic material from countless champions bubbled ominously. That's where you're wrong, Zara replied, her voice carrying an authority that made even Krell pause. Humanity didn't send me to be your specimen, we sent me to shut you down. The fight that followed would be spoken of in whispers across the galaxy for years to come. Krell unleashed abilities stolen from 100 champions' energy projection, molecular manipulation, temporal distortion. But Zara matched him move for move, her natural abilities proving that humanity's path of evolution could surpass artificial enhancement. As they battled, Varric and the others worked to free the surviving specimens and transmit evidence of the facility's atrocities to the Galactic Council. Drax used his cybernetic interfaces to broadcast the truth to every screen in the arena complex, showing the spectators exactly what their entertainment had been funding. The final blow came not from physical combat, but from within. The freed experiments, seeing Zara fighting on their behalf, turned on their former captors. Even the Shadow Guard, their programming disrupted by Zara's precise strikes, began to remember who they once were. Krell, his power turning against him as the absorbed abilities began to conflict, faced Zara one last time. "What are you?" he demanded, his crystalline form fracturing. "I am humanity's warning," Zara replied. "A reminder that true evolution comes from within, not from stealing and combining the powers of others. We've been watching, learning, and growing naturally. And now we're ready to take our place in the galaxy." The laboratory's containment systems finally failed, and Krell's unstable form began to collapse. As the facility crumbled around them, Zara and her allies led the survivors to safety. Outside, Galactic Council ships were already arriving, their intervention prompted by the evidence they'd received. In the aftermath, as the truth about the tournament spread across the galaxy, something unexpected happened. Rather than fear humanity's hidden potential, many species began to seek their guidance. The path of natural evolution, of pushing the boundaries of what was possible without artificial enhancement, offered a new way forward. Zara stood at the edge of the ruined arena, watching the three suns set over Nexus Prime. Varric approached, her bioluminescence now steady and calm. "What happens now?" the former champion asked. "Now," Zara said, looking out at the city where ships from across the galaxy were landing, bringing investigators, healers, and diplomats. "We build something better, something true." She turned to face her ally. "The real tournament, the challenge of reaching our full potential without losing our souls, that's just beginning." As night fell on Nexus Prime, the story of the human who had exposed the dark truth of the galaxy's greatest fighting tournament was already spreading to distant stars. But few understood the deeper truth, that this had been more than just an investigation or a fight for justice. It was humanity's declaration that they were ready to emerge from the shadows, not as conquerors or victims, but as guides on the path of true evolution. The age of artificial enhancement was ending. The age of natural potential was about to begin.